Boom, boom, pow. Welcome back to another edition of Cowboys Gameplan. It is kind of let's say a victory Monday here. Maybe a moral victory Monday. Maybe if you were a hater yesterday, today's a good day to be a hater on a victory Monday for us. As Dallas Cowboys fans, we got to see the Green Bay Packers fall to Ben Johnson and the Bears right there. And then on top of all that, on Sunday, you got to enjoy, after you had a nice lunch and everything, the Cry Eagles Cry. And the Eagles fall into the 49ers. If you haven't already, man, hit us up with a like, subscribe, comment as we're going through this. Let us know your thoughts about, the Green Bay Packers losing on top of the Eagles losing. We love to talk trash. We are unfiltered. We are father and son duo right here. And we're here to just give you some horrible opinions, some horrible takes, and we're rolling with it. So I'm Slater. That's Mike. Mike, let's kind of start off with some fun stuff here. How did you feel about the Packers and the Eagles losing this weekend?
You know, it's like one of those weekends where it's football all weekend. So it's going to be, today will be the fifth straight day of playoff football starting on Thursday night with college. And man, you just can't ask for much more. Every game for this wild card weekend was a banger. I mean, it was great. It came down to the last 2 minutes of each game. You know, the teams I picked to win won, and the teams that I needed and so desperately wanted to lose lost. And you said it best. You know, we had a nice hot chicken lunch, and then Packers go down, and then the Eagles, who, you know, have been talking so much trash this year, you know, are now imploding. As you can see, they're turning against each other. You know, you got some of their best advocates on national media now wanting to fire everybody, fire the coaches, fire the coordinators, getting rid of players, and it's all down to reality. The reality is they're headed for Cancun much earlier than they thought, but not as early as everybody in, you know, this side of reality expected. Which is great.
Not at all.
It's great. I love it. It's amazing. It's amazing. And you look at that and you're like, how does a team that's that loaded fail so miserably? I mean, you just watched the last drive of that game and they ran 3 plays, you know, and the whole game Saleh was just daring them. You can have this 8-yard bullshit, but at some point, if you want to beat us, you're going to have to score points, and you're going to have to go down the field to do it. And they had very little success, and one of their best players didn't come through.
Yeah.
And it's great to see, you know. It's great to see. I love it. I'm very happy. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I'm amazed. I'm happy. All those Eagles fans that got to enjoy an extra week of football. Sure, you can bring it on. Dallas, you know, you didn't make playoffs, so it doesn't matter. You didn't win the division, Dallas. It don't matter. I don't care what you say. For extra 1 week of football, you can have it, because it's better for you to lose on the grandest of stage than to just not make it at all. Because what's the whole point of making the dance if you're not going to win it? And that's what Dallas gets every year. We make the dance. If we fall short of anything other than a Super Bowl, it don't matter. They're going to make fun of us. So guess what? Yep. You're going to get your get back. FAFO. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
It's like one of those things. We can buy that T-shirt, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously, you would have to, because you're not a player either. But it's like, you know, that's just a hat and T-shirt game that they won. Nothing special. You know, one and done. It might as well not even have happened. You got beat by a team that is decimated. They're literally dragging their asses to the bus to get on the flight, you know, for next week. And it looks like they have the right players and the right coaches to actually pull it off. So it's pretty good to see that. And I can't wait to see how this unfolds for the rest of the season. I'm now, you know, I was pro Bears, and then I was pro 49ers.
Yep.
But that's all over with. Sorry, the Niners got to go next. I don't want to see them advance anymore. I have a feeling we already know who's going to end up in the Super Bowl on this thing. And, you know, it was a small truce with the 49ers, but I hate you just as much as I hate the Eagles. So you got to go next. Sorry about it. I think you're too decimated anyway, so I shouldn't have to try too hard to get you out.
Man, let's be honest about something.
Sure.
I get it, Eagles. Y'all won the Super Bowl last year. I get that, you've been able to parade for a little while here in the 2020 decade that we're living in here. But let me tell you this. Jalen Hurts ain't it. It ain't
No.
it. I'm gonna start this conversation right now.
Yeah,
Jalen
let's do it.
Hurts ain't it. Not
I don't think
not
so.
not when you're in comparison to Dak Prescott. And I don't care what anyone says. At the end of the day, let's just take Jalen Hurts versus Dak Prescott out of the equation in the whole entirety of it. There's so many times that they try to have this debate, and it's like they're trying to prove something. It's okay if your quarterback is a system quarterback. It's okay to admit your quarterback's not the best. If he wins you games, why are you mad? If he gets you to the playoffs and he gets you to the big games, that's fine. There ain't nothing wrong with it.
Sure.
But you need to admit for what your team is. The Eagles were the opposite of what the Dallas Cowboys were this year. A really great defense with a very poor offense. Dallas was dealing with the same issue, a very great offense versus a very poor defense. Right. And without that defense, the Eagles wouldn't even been close. We may have somehow snuck in the playoffs at 7 wins at this at the rate that this was going, but the defense literally carried that team. And we just need to quit having that debate. That's all I'm here to say.
No, I totally agree. So what do you think? Do you think this is the Eagle fans, they're kind of split. Some of them are, most of them, and I'll actually put it this way, all of them want the offensive coordinator gone. At least half the fans blame him and all the fans want him gone. That's one. The other part is half the fans are for Sirianni and the other half are against Sirianni. And then there's some of the smart fans are kind of pointing the finger at Jalen, right? My personal opinion on Jalen. I think he's just a slower running back that can throw 4 passes above average. And that's his level of quarterback. He hasn't shown me that he can take over a game and pass the rock all the way through and make play after play after play. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that can. He's not one of them anyway. So that's where I stand on it. But which tribe are you rocking with? Are you rocking with the ones that think it's a Sirianni issue, it's an OC issue, or it's, the offense all starts with your quarterback? Is that the issue?
I think it all starts with your quarterback, but I go back to what I just said a minute ago about Jalen Hurts is a system quarterback. It has to be the right offensive coordinator that knows how to use his technique and his skills to elevate the offense, right? And of course, when you have a system quarterback, guess what you have to put around it? Elite weapons. You have to find a way to make the offense elevate to another level that helps your quarterback excel. Like, we know that we could put Dak Prescott on a bad team with bad receivers, and he's going to make the better of it than most quarterbacks can in the league. Now, imagine the Eagles without a Saquon Barkley, or keep Saquon. Imagine them without an A.J. Brown. So it's kind of one of those things. On top of all that, it's your play caller too. We saw it this year with Dak. Look at the difference that Dak had between Mike McCarthy in that first 6 games for the injury and then Brian Schottenheimer this year. It was 2 different worlds. You saw a run game actually build up. You saw some really good play action. So it's one of those things where, and we'll get into it when we talk about draft season, is sometimes the perfect system has to work out for the perfect guy. And I don't think you could. Do I think you could bring other quarterbacks in for the Eagles and plug them in and, run the same kind of offense that you're doing? Yeah, I think anyone could run that Eagles offense.
I definitely 100% agree with that. Nothing special being – and look, I'll be realistic. What Jalen Hurts is capable of doing all the way, like max level, we haven't seen it yet. And I don't know if that's a Jalen Hurts issue or is that an OC issue? Is that an organizational issue? If he's got more, he hasn't put it on display consistently enough for us to say he is this type of elite. Yeah. Right now, he's elite based on the team that is around him and the coaching scheme that is put onto the field. So until something's proven otherwise, that's how he's going to get judged.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it all comes down to how do you want to build your team? The Eagles did not build their team around making Jalen Hurts like, oh, he's going to be our only weapon. He's going to be the only guy that we can depend on. They
Right.
built that team to elevate his play based off the other guys around him. And if you don't have the other guys around him, Jalen Hurts isn't going to Buffalo and doing what Josh Allen does. He ain't going to Kansas City doing what, and that's
Right.
okay. It's okay to admit that. I would admit that if Dak wasn't that, but Dak can take anything and make something work.
But your
Mahomes
OC has to cook in that situation too, right? You
yeah.
got to have something. You got to save some gas in the tank, a little flavor for the sizzle, so that when it's time to put something new out there, it's not four verts, hooks, and four verts in a mesh route. You know what I mean? You got to add something to it.
Do you think Kellen Moore wins that game if he's the OC yesterday? Do the Eagles win if Kellen Moore is the offensive coordinator?
I mean, I can't talk in that I can't know that, but I can know this. The play calling would be much more difficult to defend and much more unpredictable than what we saw. You saw the same game I did. You knew exactly what the 49ers were doing.
Yeah.
They were giving you the underneath, and they were running, I think it was like 4 quarters, and they were just sitting back. Everybody was on the outside was doubled. The middle had double, and then maybe one guy was running around with somebody carrying and just was going to bounce. If it was a short throw pass, he was going to come down on top of that. And then if it was thrown over his head, he would have, backpedaled and ended up helping that coverage as well. So it's like you look at what happened with, the Bears in their final play, that little pump play to the outside, on that out route, and then that Texas route that they cooked up for
McCaffrey.
Yeah, McCaffrey. That Texas route was sick, and that was coming from behind the line of scrimmage. That was genius.
That was just some great coaches playing together.
He knew that player was coming off of an injury. He's got his best guy who's been involved in the whole game, who's handsy as hell, and he just ran everybody off to the right side of that play, ran that Texas route, and he just hooked around, knowing that his guy was going to be one-on-one, and it was going to come down to fast feet, and the faster feet won. And Purdy was able to take a step forward and just rip that thing in there instinctually. It was amazing. That's the kind of stuff you got to cook up at the end of the game to close it out. If you're just going to do what you've been doing, we know what's coming, and we can defend it. And that's what happened. So if Jalen Hurts is capable of more and he's not able to show it, that's an OC and coaching issue. Yep. If that's just who he is as a quarterback, then that's a Jalen Hurts issue, right? And as of right now, from what I've seen and heard from other people, that's a Jalen Hurts issue.
Yeah, man. It is what it is. I ain't upset. I ain't crying. I ain't nothing. I'm happy that they're gone, and I'm ready to move on. You ready to maybe talk some defensive coordinator football before we get into it?
Yeah, man, there's been all kinds of stuff around the organization on Dallas Cowboys football and the defensive coordinator search. All kinds of new candidates being added to the pool. But I do have to say this before we get into that too far. One of my original candidates, there was actually 2 on the list that I created before all this started. Cooley from the Panthers. I really like him. And then one that was already kind of popular, which was Al Harris. You and I both really like Al Harris. And we don't know. We're not insiders. We're not beat writers. We don't know what's going on for real in the organization. We're just fans. We pick up what we can. We try to get good information from where we can get it. But I still think that Al Harris should be a legit candidate for this DC position. I think he deserves an interview. I know he's not been put on the list yet, and then we've got guys like White Cotton who are going to, I think it said today he's going to get a virtual interview. And it's like, man, if that was the route you were going to go when you put, oh boy, in the booth, Eberflus, you should have went ahead and let him run it from there and let that kind of be his little 3 or 4 game trial period where you can assess him and see what he's about. We don't need a whole interview for him. I mean, I guess he's earned it, and it might be like one of those things you do, but I really don't see the value in that. I get casting a wide net, and I'm all for it. I love it. That's a new stroke for us. So, but maybe let's just not waste it on that one, right? Just my opinion.
No, totally. And I think when you're talking about casting that wide net, as of 20 minutes ago, Zach Orr has officially been requested for an interview. The Aaron Whitecon, like we just talked about, Jonathan Gannon, which happened earlier. You've got Jim Linhart, and then you got Dorante Jones, and you've got Banda, right? So these are all guys that, you know, obviously I think it's a good pool so far. I think there's more candidates to keep searching out there for. I think keep bringing guys in the building. I think at the end of the day, it all goes back to what Brian Schottenheimer said. Can you find somebody who's a good teacher? Can you find somebody who's a good mentor? We have to find somebody who's able to take the talent that we have and be able to communicate a scheme or teach a scheme to the players that we have. We talked about in our last episode, the biggest thing is you're not going to be able to turn around, take 16 of these defensive guys, you know, starters in depth, and be able to be like, oh, you're gone. Let me trade it for this, or let me go sign those guys. It's not going to happen. 75+% of this defensive roster is going to be here. But can you find the right culture? Can you find the right fit? Can you find the right teacher to teach all these guys and be able to elevate them to another level? Look what Robert Saleh did with Eric Kendricks from a month ago. Eric Kendricks, he was on our team last year that no one wanted. He was on the couch on a month ago. He could have been talking on a microphone in front of a camera just like we are. And he jumps up and he makes the game-winning play last night. 10 tackles, game-winning play. And that's what Robert Saleh does because he elevates with his scheme and the way that he's able to play football. That's what Dallas needs. And honestly, I think it's great. I think that I know, like you said, Aaron Whitecon, I wouldn't be a fan of it because he's already been a part of the defensive scheme regimen that we already had. But I think it's fair to give him an interview. I feel fair about it. Jonathan Gannon, people aren't really excited about that one. I get it. He's a former head coach who just got fired. You feel like it's like Matt Eberflus PTSD again. You're kind of like keeping that tunnel vision away from it because you feel like you're just bringing in a Matt Eberflus part two. Personally, I haven't done too deep of a dive, but I'd like to. Jim Linhart, you know, a lot of guys are talking about him. You know, him and Schottenheimer had, you know, worked together before. I think what's special about him is, you know, him being a defensive pass game coordinator with the Broncos is he probably knows the biggest fix on our defense, or he may know how to take a step on that secondary and find a fix for them. Especially somebody who Denver has kept over a couple years now. He's somebody that I would look to maybe question, how do you fix a secondary that we have? How do you recover from losing a Trayvon Diggs all-pro that you don't have anymore? How do you elevate DaRon Bland to how he was in 2023? How do you get Revell and those guys right? Because that's the questions I want, especially when you're a pass game coordinator. How do you look at schemes and stuff like that? You know, and then Zach Orr, obviously that's kind of just announced recently before we jumped on. Obviously, I know that he's done some really good work with the Ravens, and I'll be interested to see. But I'm happy that they're getting candidates or guys who they're kind of like you wouldn't see. Do we remember, what was it, 2 years ago when we brought in Zimmer and Ron Rivera and Marvin Lewis and who else was a part?
It was like just a rotation of all the old hats, you know, with long tenures and old reputations. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like one of those things where it's like, Dallas, what are we doing? And that feels like it was a Jerry Jones-led search. This one definitely feels like there's someone else leading the search. I don't know. Maybe it's not Shotty. We're not inside the building. We don't know any of this, but it definitely feels that Jerry has maybe said, Shotty, you know, go get your top 10 guys or 10 guys you've been watching, you know, from this past year and go bring them in. Let's interview, you know, 10 to 15 guys and let them have it. But
I think that's what they're trying to do is they're trying to find the equivalent of, you know, Brian Schottenheimer in a defensive coordinator for the future, right? They're trying to find that guy that's going to come in, develop a system, train assistant coaches, make a name for himself, turn the team around, have defensive success, and then, you know, put himself out there for a possible head coaching position in 2 or 3 years. But then it'll establish a culture here defensively that can be carried on by the proteges that he brings in along with him, right?
Yeah. I totally agree. And it's one of those things where you need that. For Brian Schottenheimer to be successful in Dallas, he needs a counterpart who can handle the defensive side. He's a great head coach and he's a great offensive play caller. We saw that in his first year. Wasted a really good year for a defense to be terrible. I mean, you could have been not awful and we could have maybe won a wild card game this weekend. And this is the time. This is the time to push the chips all in. At the end of the day, I said this to you the other day. You're getting to a point with Dak Prescott's contract, with the guys you just trade for, trading away Michael Parsons, adding that draft capital. You've got to find a way to go all in, bust the budget, or whatever Jerry said the other day at the end of the season press conference, because that time is now. I know a lot of people are like, well, we need to be hesitant, or hey, we need to be careful of what we do here. No, you need to go full send. Bring in somebody who's hungry, ready to be a defensive coordinator, who can match Brian Schottenheimer's culture, match his intensity, match his ability to be a player-first guy. I think that's the biggest thing, is make sure he's a player-first guy, because that's what Schottenheimer is. He's a player-first guy. He's not going to force anything that a player maybe isn't comfortable with or doesn't want to do, because he wants to work with the skills that they have and not try to force them to do something that's not in their wheelhouse. And I think that's a lot of the downfall that we had with Matt Eberflus this past year, was he was forcing our guys to do things they could do. When was the last time we played that much zone ever with a team that was all man? Dan, like you said, right? Dan Quinn built that team, and they ran a lot more man than what they did with Matt Eberflus. Matt Eberflus was like, oh, no, we're going to make Kenneth Murray keep going out there, and then we're going to keep putting Trayvon Diggs in zone when he's been a man corner his whole entire career. We're going to make Deron Bland a zone corner when he's been man his whole entire time. And so I'll quit ranting, but it's really crucial that they nail this hire and, like you said, be able to teach those assistant coaches, because I got a good feeling that if they nail this offseason, this defensive corner that gets hired is probably gone after a year.
So do you feel like at this point, because there's still some names out there, there's still some good quality guys out there. I still think Al Harris, Kelvin Shepard, I think Navarro Bowman's a good candidate. We got Jonathan Cooley with the Panthers, Terry Joseph with the Saints, Bobby Babich with the Bills. There's Jamil Adai with the Bills. There's a lot of good guys out there. Most of them probably won't get contacted. But do you feel like the head coach, the new defensive coach, new defensive coordinator has probably already been identified? Or do you think that they're still searching for the right guy? Or do you feel like they've probably already interviewed the guy that they want?
Man, a lot of people point to that Jim Jim Leonard. And, I can see why. He's probably a favorite just because they're going to be able to, because of him and what Shotty did beforehand. So sure. I think he's the favorite right now. I would still like to see them bring in candidates. I would like to see if they would be willing to just bring in an Al Harris, or, kind of admit that, like, hey, we kind of regret letting you go. Are you interested in at least coming in for an interview? If they were to bring in Al Harris and then bring in a couple more guys, like you said, and still hire Jim
so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I would at least respect it. Hey, you tried. Maybe Schottenheimer was like, nah, I'm not feeling this. I really like what Jim Linhart's got to bring, and I know what he is because of our past, and so I kind of feel that.
So another question, one of the big playmakers, and he had a great game, was Eric Kendricks for the 49ers, right? Excellent game, was part of the team under Zimmer. We both liked him. He's an older player, but he's still a quality linebacker. Do you feel like sometimes Dallas moves on from players and then ends up regretting it almost immediately? Do you feel like we sometimes move on from players too early, thinking that they're replaceable, and then find out that they're really not? I know contracts play a small part in that, but these guys, that I'm thinking of aren't huge money guys. They want to play football. And I think sometimes we let players move on too early. Do you get that same sense watching Eric Kendricks go out there and play so well for the 49ers on defense?
Honestly, not when it comes to the Eric Kendricks situation. I can definitely feel that for some guys like that were maybe, guys who are coming off rookie deals, or guys who are, depth chart guys, or depth guys on the roster who move on. But when you
wouldn't take Eric Kendricks over Kenneth Murray Jr. this year?
I would, knowing now what I saw from Kenneth Murray, but to start the season, probably not. I mean,
so what about a guy like Jordan Lewis? Would you take him over some of the corners we played with this year?
I would take him I would take him. I would. That's a guy. That's a guy that I was talking about. Someone that you
Yeah,
let go and
yeah,
you should have held on to. Jordan
sure.
Lewis was one of them. You felt that. Reddy Stewart did a good job though.
No, yeah, he
Kind
did
of,
a good job, but we needed
kind of
more than
like
Ready Stewart.
stepping
Yeah,
up.
we
It
needed a
wasn't
lot
like,
more.
yeah, it wasn't like Jordan Lewis esque, but he stepped up to the plate on that.
Right.
But he's one of those guys that I'm talking about. Yeah,
Me personally, watching Eric Kendricks go out there and ball like he did, man, we could have used that this year. We
yeah,
really, really could have used that. And I didn't see any reason for him, to be handed the pink slip. I think we really could have benefited with him being around for another year.
yep,
Obviously, he can still get it done. He made the crucial game-ending pass breakup. I know hindsight's 2020, but I still think he was playing at a high enough level, knowing the depth at what we had in that position.
yeah.
I think sometimes Dallas just they think they can do a little bit more than what they actually can, and yeah, we missed on that one. Missed on a few. That's just, the top two that come to mind, but definitely think Dallas misses on a few of those every year.
Yeah. So Dallas Crimson Tide asks, is a rebuild still possible for the Cowboys? Let me ask you this, Dallas, and if you're still here in the chat, what do you mean by a rebuild? Are we talking about like just kind of like a retool? Or are we talking about a complete rebuild where you're looking to like, kind of move on from Dak, move on from some of our key big contracts, let go Pickens and look to maybe tank for a couple years to kind of build some from the ground up? Or are you looking for just kind of a retooling where we're kind of just get some veteran defensive guys like an Eric Kendricks and stuff like that and retool this defense to kind of go on a run here? But I'll kick it off to you, Mike. Do you think a rebuild still possible for the Cowboys, or is it kind of all in and then we may be in rebuild because we either won the hand or we lost the hand?
I think it's one of those things where two things can be true. One, last year Jerry said that we're all in.
Yeah.
Right. We thought it meant one thing, but what it actually meant is the players that are the staple cornerstone players of this team, those are the players we're rocking with for the rest of this ride. This plane is in the air and it's either going to land where it's supposed to land or it's coming out of the sky, not hot. Right. Yep. So we're all in on these players. Now, you can also add to that while we're moving. I know it's kind of, you can't build a plane in the air, but what I'm saying is we can definitely fill seats on it. Right. Yeah. So it's like, if we're going to retool or rebuild anything, it's going to be one side of the ball, and that's going to be the defensive side of the ball. I think they're going to, keep the offense at least 85, 90% of the same players are going to be back on offense. We've got a couple spots to bolster and re-sign some guys, but this is definitely going to be a defensive rebuild, refill for that side of the ball this year.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about rebuild, unfortunately, due to the contract that you gave Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb back in a season ago, you're unfortunately backed against a wall where you have to utilize it as much as possible, especially if you're looking to, stay competitive. I think especially with Dak's contract, you're stuck in not being able to rebuild. If you were looking to rebuild, you wouldn't have paid Dak Prescott what you paid him. You live, let him walk in free agency.
Yeah.
And you would have just honestly started from there, right? Maybe you get Trey Lance in the building or trade for Joe Milton. And then we're in the situation like the Raiders, and we're not in the situation we are in now. So I like the question. I think it's there, but I think you have to go all in now to put yourself in a rebuild because you either won the hand where you won a Super Bowl or you lost and you fell short. And now all the contracts are going to eat you alive. It's kind of like, I always relate it to the 2021 Rams. And I've told you this multiple times. And for people watching, the 2021 Rams went all in, trade for Matthew Stafford, went to go get Jalen Ramsey, went to go get Odell Beckham Jr., and then they had a really great run. They won their Super Bowl. And after that, you saw contracts start to fall apart a little bit. They kind of had a couple down years, and now they're back at it. And that's what I love about going all in is I think if you nail on your draft picks and you're able to execute very well in the offseason with some cheap free agents and you're able to execute really well in the draft on those positions that you lost that you're having to refill, you can be back in it just like the Rams are. Look how many times the Rams have been able to be competitive since 2021 when everyone was like, man, those contracts are going to come back to bite you. Dallas could do that now, but the question is, will they? Will they pay George Pickens? Will they bring back Javonte Williams? Will they hire the right defensive coordinator? And when they retool this defense to bring in the guys they need to. Don't be afraid to bring back Jadeveon Clowney. He showed great effort this year. He showed great strength and he showed great skill for our defensive line. That veteran presence alone, that effort. I love Jadeveon Clowney because of the effort. I didn't think that an older man like that could have that much effort, but he was whooping young guys on the field. He's like, man, give me that money. So that's how I feel about it. All right. You got anything else on maybe the DC search or anything like that?
No, I think we covered it all.
All right, let's get down to it's time for your depth chart.
Yep. So I owe some depth chart madness here. So we're going to continue right along with what am I looking at here? What we got? I think we're rocking with the defensive ends.
Yes, sir.
So, I'm going to start out with Mr. Ezeraku, right? And man, despite what you may see with your eyes, with your opticals, your eye brains, eye bugs, I think this young man did a hell of a job this year. And I think this is going to be a big time player for us. He is going to be an all-star on the Dallas Cowboys team going forward. I think he has that kind of talent. He makes an impact on every single play, whether it's sealing the edge, making great decisions, containing the quarterback. He may not he didn't get a ton of sacks. He didn't get a ton of, strips or fumbles or anything like that, but he put pressure on that backfield every snap he took, no matter what kind of play was coming out of it, right? If it was a run play, he was there. He knew what to do on the end. He knew how to handle his assignment. If it was a drop back, he knew how to bend the tackle around into the quarterback space to make him uncomfortable. And that's just year one. And we play in a tough division. We've got really tough opponents. We had a tough schedule this year. So he played some of the best. And I think he handled it really, really well. Anyway, he's our defensive end, 6'2", 247 pounds, 22 years old. Our second round draft pick from last year, 603 snaps this year with an overall grade of 73.1, which puts him 38th overall. I think he's an excellent rotational player. He's going to be a mainstay at that position for a long time. His workload this year shows that he can do everything and do it to a level that's impactful, and he can sustain it, and he's sustainable himself. So on run defense, his numbers were 22, 29 solo tackles, 12 assists, 24 stops, and 1 forced fumble, which is pretty good for year one. I mean, that is
pretty good.
That's ranking top 20, top 30 all the way around. That's excellent. I think he's definitely underrated and very strong. He is active and productive versus the run, especially for an edge. He has high value disruption, and he's not just a containment edge, right? He can mess up a play. He can strafe side to side. He can roll over the top, and he can chase down a quarterback with wheels. And he's shown he can do all that this year. So as he learns and develops and improves, he's just going to get more savvy. His feet are going to get faster. His technique are going to get better, and he's going to be a real problem and a long-term threat, right? So I think he wins with ability to chop hands. He's got a quick shed ability. He's disciplined on the edge, and he has a hell of a closing burst once he gets free. So he's showing all those signs of being great long-term. For an edge, I give his run defense above average. I think he's done an excellent job, and he'll continue to do so. He's a reliable edge setter, strong pursuit defender, and trustworthy, especially on your early downs when the offense is trying to develop a drive. So I think he does an excellent job there. In coverage, we're so-so, but
yeah.
And you're noticing a trend with all of our defensive players. Coverage has been an issue because we did so poorly of it as a defensive unit this year that it affected each personnel group, right? So everybody performed poorly in grading on coverage because it was just atrocious across the board. That'll even out next year. So we'll count that into grading as we have all along so far. So 0 batted down passes. He had limited coverage responsibility because he's an edge, and minimal impact, but it's not problematic because he wasn't asked to do it a ton, right? But when he's asked to like drop shallow and set the edge in zone looks, he doesn't create negative plays, but he doesn't also add a ton of value to a coverage scheme, which is fair. So we'll give him an average on that. His pass rush performance was pretty good. I mean, he had 36 total pressures, 22 hurries, 12 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. 90th in sacks overall, but the fact that he put pressure on the quarterback so much for a rookie, he ranked in the top 45, which is, again, pretty good. What that means is he's consistently affecting the quarterback, even if the sack totals ranks. So above average. I think he does a good job. Pass rush is solid. Sack production needs some work. That will come with it. So overall, I would give Davin Azaraku for his first year. I'll give him a grade of a B.
Okay.
I think that's pretty good. I think his best role is going to be an early down edge, excellent pass rusher. He may end up being a primary sack artist, or he may be a very good candidate to be the edge that is opposite a good second seat, right? But he's the guy that gets sacked and the pass rusher flushes a quarterback out. I think his counter time on his handwork needs some improvement, but I think his finishing techniques are really, really strong versus quarterbacks. So that's what I see going for him in the future as he develops in his second year.
Yeah, man. Davin Azaraku, what I love about him coming out of college and, seeing it in his first year, it's all about his motor and his drive. He has a really high tendency to be all effort. Azaraku has the ability to be something special just based off his effort alone. I mean, his ability to always keep fighting during the play, his ability to, and we saw a lot of growth from him since week 1 against the Eagles. You saw him get his butt kicked a couple times, kind of like a welcome to the NFL moment for the rookie.
Yeah.
And then over time, you start seeing them swim moves get a little bit better. Them bull rushing moves get a little bit better. You see that explosiveness gets a little bit better. And I'll be excited to see if we get the right defensive coordinator, what a Davin Azaraku can do for our team. He showed a lot of potential. I think Dallas hit on the draft pick, and I think it just takes more skill. No one coming out. I mean, I think he's up there with Abdul Carter, right?
Sure.
I think it's one of those conversations where eventually in a year or two, you may say Davin Azaraku is better than Abdul Carter.
Right.
He shows that skill. He shows that explosiveness. As long as he has the effort and the speed, we will always be fine with Davin Azaraku.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if this is his base level, and this is as bad as he's going to deliver.
Can it get worse?
Yeah, it can't get worse. So he can only get better because that's the natural progression of an athlete in the NFL. So I'm really excited about him. I think he's a great player, one of my favorites on defense, and I think he'll have long-term success. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. What up there, Mac? We are currently going over some depth chart guys, defensive ends, but we just went over some DC candidates. Let us know how you feel about that. And then as well as I'll kind of show you here, we had some, some Cry Eagles cry yesterday. And then we had some Packers, fall short to the Chicago Bears. So let us know how you feel about that. But yeah, man, we just got done talking about Davin and Azaraku. Mike gave a great spill about him, kind of nailing the explanation there, and then just me adding on his skill and motor and his ability to only keep growing in year 2. Great things for Davin Azaraku coming. Oh my gosh, I cannot speak tonight. I think I'm getting excited for some Monday Night Football here.
Yeah, we're getting close. So I'm going to go ahead and do our Sam Williams review here. He's our second round pick from 2022. And I'll get this rolling up here on the screen for you. So he's a 26-year-old, 6'4", 261-pound edge rusher who had 474 snaps this year with an overall grade of 57.5. He was a rotational edge this year, so he came off the bench, special packages, things like that. So we're going to start with his run defense performance, which was pretty inconsistent for someone who's a little more senior, to somebody like Donovan Ezeraku, who's a rookie. He had 25 solo tackles, 9 assists, 21 stops. His run defense grade was a 54.7, which pushed him just under 100 overall, and 1 forced fumble. What I saw in review was he flashes a lot of strength and finesse, but lacks consistency. He may get 20 snaps, and he may only be effective on 1 or 2 of those at best. Didn't see a lot of development from when he was on the field last year, as little as he was. So not too much to really grade on him. He makes some impacts, but he lost edge integrity. He had a lot of late reactions to the flow of the ball, difficulty disengaging cleanly. So he get caught up a lot and couldn't break off tackles to make a play. The forced fumble adds some value to his game, but it's isolated. It's not something that's representative of what he can deliver in and out, play after play. So his run defense verdict was a little bit below average from the rest of the guys on the line. In coverage, it's another failure. I think he had 1 batted down pass. Not a core part of his role, coverage, as expected. He was supposed to be a pressure sack specialist, and that's what they put in an attempt to do. Otherwise, he had a very neutral impact in coverage as well. He's not a liability, but he adds minimal value to pass coverage. His pass rush, he flashes, but he finishes a little bit poorly on film review. 24 total pressures, 20 hurries, 3 quarterback hits, 1 sack, and a pass rush grade of 55.0, putting at 105 total overall. So he's willing to do it. He'll get close, but he rarely finishes. So he'll be, there just after the ball is released or just after the running back finds the gap. That's when he arrives. So he's just a little bit late. His pressure profile, watching tape, shows that his initial burst off the snap is good, but he has limited counter development. He hasn't developed moves well enough and instincts and quick enough feet to really break around the end to make an impact fast enough. He has poor conversion once he's engaged, and his sack and hit totals are well below what you'd expect for someone his size and speed combo. So I give him a below average on pass rush effective. His disruption level also does not match his physical tools, and he needs significant refinement to be more than a rotational pass rusher going down in the future. So overall, I'm going to give him a C. I think a C is fair. I think his best role moving forward is a limited rotational player, obviously passing downs only. And his needs for development are expanded counter moves, better hand usage, and improved edge discipline.
Yeah. Nailed it again. Honestly, Sam Williams had the opportunity to step up this year. This was kind of his year to kind of step up and maybe solidify whether he was worth being a starter in the NFL or not. I felt that Sam Williams had the opportunity to step up, especially after the Micah Parsons trade, right? It became, Ezeraku was kind of your best defensive end, and, you had Dante Fowler, and then you were like, well, can Sam Williams step up to the plate? Can this, we talked about in our very, very first episode here, we said we drafted a lot of second-round talent into our defensive ends, right? You look at Sam Williams, you look at Dalvin Ezeraku. At the time, you had Marshawn Nealon. Rest in peace, Marshawn Nealon. But these were all guys that you drafted a lot of second-round capital into, and, we were looking for one of them to step up to the plate. And Sam Williams was really the front runner in that. I felt that maybe he was ready for it. I felt that off of his backup role playing behind Micah Parsons and behind Dante Fowler and all them in 2023 and a little bit in 2024, he was ready to be that guy. But, kind of like what Derek Mack's saying here. He did okay only on, he only on special teams. That's kind of the guy he kind of showed out to be was, he's just a depth guy and he does special teams and that's really it. Some of the key plays that I remember when thinking about Sam Williams this past year was like you said, inconsistency, right? But for me, it was his ability to understand the game, or like he would come off the edge so hard and so fast that he wouldn't realize that jet sweep's going right behind him the other way. I can't remember what game it was, but I feel like I'm going to say the Carolina Panthers game. It's what's coming to mind here, and I could be wrong, but there was a play where he shot so far down the line,
took himself right out of the play,
the opposite way. And the first thing I said to you was, DeMarcus Lawrence would have made that play. That's the kind of guy I was thinking Sam Williams could be. DeMarcus Lawrence had football IQ, football smarts, watching film or whatever he was doing to understand that if a jet sweep was coming his way, he's nailing it because he could see that handoff, or he could understand that when they do this motion and we're in this, setup, it's coming my way. I know I got to hit the motion guy. Instead of just shooting straight down the line, then the motion guy goes around you. And what was your job on a sweep, or what's your job on the outside play? Usually a defensive end's job on any kind of stretch or outside plays is to contain the edge and force everything back inside to your linebackers. And that's where I think that inconsistency comes in for Sam Williams. On top of all that, he definitely got blocked out a lot by tight ends and left tackles and right tackles and was just pushed back too easily. So I think it's fair to give him a C, and he's definitely one of those guys that's special teams depth role.
Yeah, I agree. So we're going to move right along here, and we're going to talk about James Houston, our free agent signing from last year. And I think, honestly, James Houston outplayed Sam Williams. James Houston did some of the things that Sam Williams should have been doing last year, this year, right? So it kind of puts it in perspective for you that way. Because, being an undrafted free agent, this is not someone you come in, you would expect to be able to come into a game and make any kind of an impact immediately, or a significant impact. But just the effort that he put out on the field and the plays that he did make when he got an opportunity and was in position to do so made him stand out in my mind beyond what, my breakdown here is going to say, and in comparison of performance to someone like Sam Williams. So he is our third left defensive end, 6'1", 245 pounds, had 305 snaps this year with an overall grade of 69.1, putting him 48th overall. Run defensive performance was a lot better than you would think and better than what most expected, right? So his run defense grade was 67.4, putting him at 35th. 15 solo tackles, 4 assists, 12 stops, and 1 forced fumble. Despite being limited in size, Houston holds up surprisingly well versus the run. His run defense grade outperforms his raw tackle totals, suggesting that he is a good disciplined edge, effective spill contain responsibilities. His low stop rank reflects usage, not necessarily an inability, because the more opportunities to reduce, the better your number is going to be. So that kind of did affect him there as a defender. He was not a primary run defender at all. Forced fumbles does add some value and a little bit of leverage to his number. So that was good to see in the film. So for a run defense, I give him average, maybe slightly above average. He's not a liability in run defense. He's very trustworthy when he's protected by a good scheme and a good play call. He's not built for early down volume. So he's not someone who's going to play 1, 2, 3. You put him in on third downs to be a missile to send around towards the quarterback and the backfield. That's what he's effective at. He's got a high functioning fast motor for it. He's really good. Coverage, again, so, not the best, not the worst. 0 breakups, sacks, incompletions, pass breakups, where you want to say. He had minimal coverage snaps, though. So, like I said, he's a package guy. It's really not part of his value profile. Didn't see a lot of it on film review. When he drops shallow, he's assigned sound, but he's assigned a role, but he's not disruptive as a coverage guy, right? He just drops back, spies, does what he's supposed to do, doesn't make much of an impact there. So his coverage verdict, again, it's fair. He's not a concern. He's not a liability, but he's also not a contributor in coverage at all. So no impact on his score for the year on that. But as a pass rusher, that's his calling card. That's who he is. That's his job. That's his function. That's what he's going to make his bread on, right? So his pass rush grade is 69.5, which puts him at 41st overall. 6 sacks, 25 total pressures, 9 hurries, 10 quarterback hits. He's a finish first pass rusher, so he's going to get home. He's going to make good impacts, got fast feet, good technique, really quick at getting around the corner. And he stands out relative to the amount of snaps that he had. The impact he made does stand out pretty well. He's had fewer total pressures, but his snap count's really low considering he was a 3rd and 4th down guy most of the time. He has great high quality pressures when he gets home. His wins are a first step explosion. He can bend the edge really, really well, and he has timing rather than power. So he knows when to attack and what angles to hit from, which is really, really good. So I give him above average as a pass rusher. I think he's a legitimate sack threat. He's an ideal change-up rusher, and his production exceeds the amount of snaps that he got, right? So the amount of plays he played, he did better than what you would expect for someone with such a low snap count. So overall, I'm going to give him a C just because he's coming off the bench. He's not asked to do a ton of plays, but that does play against him a little bit. But I think that would only improve with more opportunity. But as a pass rusher, he did well, and as a run defender, he did pretty well. So I think he's an overall C for the year. I think he's best in a sub package pass rusher. Obviously, on passing downs, Y9 or even stand up looks, on like 5-man fronts or NASCAR packages. He should be protected from heavy run volume and paired with a strong edge rusher opposite of him. And if he added a couple of counter moves versus tackles, that would really help up his game and development. I think that's what they'll do with him next year.
Yeah. James Houston, man. Oh, man. You know what? Honestly, now that you kind of broke it down and now I'm thinking about it, James Houston was kind of another one of those guys where it's like, why did Matt Eberflus not play him more, especially during the early part of the season where he was showing such success?
That's that stubbornness you're hearing being talked about by the players in the locker room who were like, it didn't matter what you did because you weren't going to get an opportunity no matter what because he's playing favorites so heavily.
Yeah, I agree. And you were wondering, like, why was James Houston not getting more looks or getting more snaps? Because he was leading our team in sacks. He was like the Javion Clowney Jr. before Javion Clowney came in. All effort, showing all heart, just, pass rushing, getting those sacks, doing more than what was expected of him to do when they signed him. So
Bobby Boucher, man, that's what he was. Just go kill that guy with the football, right?
Basically. And so it was one of those things where I was kind of amazed where Matt Eberflus, again, like with Logan Wilson and the late part of the season, what are you doing not playing this guy? So, man, it sucks. But, I expect that guy to fight at camp next year, and I hope that he's on the roster next year. But he's going to have to show up to camp because with guys like him, like you said off the beginning, undrafted free agent, they have to fight season in, season out. They don't get no guaranteed contract. They don't get a guaranteed next game, and he'll have to come earn it again. And that's okay. That's what we need in Dallas. We want to compete every time. We don't want someone to ever feel comfortable in their job unless they've earned it. If you were a Micah Parsons of the world, you can feel comfortable because you've earned that money. You've earned that contract. If you're, Quinn Williams, you can feel comfortable, but the guys that are going to be surrounding you, they need to earn it. They need to be those dogs, and they really need to bring something out of them next year. So,
sure.
Derek Mack says defense boils down to a better coach, better linebacker, and secondary play, but we have to hit on the coach. Derek Mack, who's your ideal DC candidate right now? There's a bunch of guys out there, and there's a bunch of guys who haven't been named for an interview yet. Is there someone that you like out there? But yeah, I mean, kind of like you said, at the end of the day, if we don't hit on the coach, we're going to be in the same situation as we were last year. Maybe a little bit better, if they're not, as horrible as Matt Eberflus, but we have to find a way to be able to hit on the coach.
Yeah, 100%. And the vision of the coach and what they see the offense or see what the defense can do now. Like, I want a coach that can come in and say, okay, with this player, and this group of players and this personnel group here, this is what I can do under my tutelage and what I think I can bring to the table scheme wise.
Yep.
Right. I want to see that plan laid out so that I can envision the same thing in my mind as if I'm reading a book. Right.
Yep.
I can say, oh, okay, I can see that happening. Don't just come in and say, this is my routine. This is how I prepare for a game. And this is what my scheme is going to look like on the field. How are you going to achieve those three things with what we have here and what we can potentially bring to you, right? And then how are your assistant coaches going to be able to deliver that in the years to come? Those are the things that I want to be able to verify when this DC is identified.
Yeah, not the Mike McCarthy special where he comes in after having a couple years off and he's like, "Hey guys, I did one thing while I was off during the whole year. I studied analytics." And you're like, "Hey, sir, you are hired," and don't get me wrong, the Mike McCarthy tenured, we had good moments, and then we obviously had very bad moments in the playoffs, but it's like one of those things. Don't bring a defense coordinator in who's like, well, I had the top, if let's say we were high in the Packers DC, well, I had Micah Parsons all year, that makes me a great guy. That makes me great. Well, awesome, but it's one of those things where it's like, no, you need to show, it's like a manual. How are you going to teach these guys? How are you going to elevate your defensive, or defense assistant coaches? And how are you going to bring the James Houstons of the world to be a top tier player when he comes in? He may get 5 snaps a game, but those 5 snaps, he's guaranteed 1 sack and a 1 tackle for loss. And he knows the communication too, right? And that's something where we really haven't hit at all. It's like this past year on the field, our defensive communication was not there at all. We were not communicating. We were not focused on trying to do our jobs. When one person did our job, like you said earlier, it hurt the rest of our defense. And that's why we have such bad and low grades on this depth chart. It's not because we're like, oh, well, you're bad. We're trying to throw out some horrible grades. We
can only grade what we saw on film.
Exactly. I would love to give some A's and B's and all that out. But unfortunately, because the pass rush didn't do its job, the secondary didn't look very well. And because the secondary didn't do its job, the pass rush didn't look well because they couldn't find moments to work together. And the linebackers are in the same boat. They couldn't find a way to help the pass rushers on blitzes, and they couldn't find a way to help the secondary out in coverage. And that's the situation we are in right now. And that's why it's so important to hit on the DC. I know we've been hammering it all night, but you get this wrong.
It's step one.
Yeah, right? It's step one.
First things first. DC, identity, vision. And then you move on.
Yeah. Derek Mack said the Broncos, which I assume he's meaning Jim Leonard. So I like that. I think he's the favorite. We talked about it earlier. I think he's definitely the favorite. And on top of that, Derek Mack adds on, I think Flores is going for a head coaching job. Probably so. And rightfully so. If not, he's going to be one of the highest paid defensive coordinators in the league, like Saul is. So wherever he ends up, it's going to be good money or a good job. So
yeah, I think that's pretty likely. I would still like to see Dallas bring him in if he's willing to take the interview. It would show me a lot. We went through it earlier in our recording here. There's great talent all over this league. I think there's excellent guys who can help a secondary. There's guys that can help defensive line. There's guys that are great linebacking assistant coaches out there. Navarro Bowman's one I keep mentioning. This was a player. He was a long time player and a very good linebacker. This is somebody who knows his stuff, and those guys are having a lot of success lately because they know how to play the game literally, and they know how to deal with the personalities that they're going to be coaching. So they know how they think. They know how they communicate. You look at Jim Leonard's another perfect example. He played in the league for years, and he worked his way up through the systems, and he developed, and now he's made a success out of the Broncos defense. So those guys have value, and there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of wizards too. Robert Saleh is a wizard. Jim Swartz, a wizard. Dan Quinn, a wizard. But, they're undiscovered wizards, and that's what I want us to find because I want our next DC to be here for a little while.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. And I think kind of Brian Schottenheimer falls into that story that you spoke of right there. Someone who's been around the league a long time, turned down head coaching jobs when he was with the Jets and all that, kind of fell off the face of the earth, 2019 to 2024, got brought on under Mike McCarthy as I'm pretty sure it was an analyst job at first. And then he became the offensive coordinator. And even though Mike McCarthy was calling plays, and then he becomes the head coach. So he's kind of a success story in all of that, right? At least in his first year,
Yeah,
time will tell how it goes.
and the son of a legendary head coach too. So
Yep.
he's got a wealth of knowledge and experience and wisdom to fall back on too. So he's got a long career ahead of him. I think he's going to be excellent. I really look forward to it. I like what Shotty's done for the team. I think he'll be a good coach, and hopefully he'll reach that level of accolade that someone like Shanahan. I would love to see that happen for him, because Shanahan's father and Schottenheimer's father, are from the same era, and it'd just be cool to have our own legend like that here in Dallas.
It'd be cool to have a legendary coach, especially since I was born 2001. I've not had a Jimmy Johnson or anything like that. So it'd be cool to have a living legend of a coach. But all right, chat, if you got any questions, now it's time to ask. If not, man, we got some Monday Night Football going on. Did you have the Steelers or the Texans in this game?
Oh man, I don't even remember. I'll have to look. I think I picked the Steelers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. But all right. Outside that, man, we appreciate y'all. Please comment, like, subscribe, share. Been working on trying to get some good short content for y'all out there, kind of our depth analysis in kind of a condensed form. On top of all that, if y'all are liking what you see, seriously, drop a like and let us know that, and lets the algorithm know too, to kind of promote us and what we're talking about. Maybe we don't know anything we're talking about, or maybe we do. We're just some guys with some microphones and some full-time jobs and who love talking about Dallas Cowboy football as a part-time job. So outside that, man, that's it. This is a Cowboys game plan, and we'll see y'all soon.